Hello everyone and welcome to another installment of the Figuring Out Fatherhood Chris Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Chris Topper, and new episodes of this podcast come out every Tuesday at 8 PM British Standard Time. On today's episode, I just want to talk to you about the importance of having savings for your children. As you're watching this, I genuinely hope you already understand and recognize the importance of having savings for your children. But today I'm going to cover the importance of saving for your children, the different types of saving accounts you can have for your children, as well as how to save for your children, or how to save in general, should I say. Please keep in mind, this isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and everything I'm talking through is what I've been through myself personally, what I've researched and what I found out on the decisions that I've made. But if you need any professional advice, please make sure you speak to an experienced professional. Before we get right into it, I think it's important that we actually cover why it's important for us to save for our children. And I'm going to explain to you from my perspective. I think it's our responsibility as parents to make sure we set our children up for the best possible future that we can. It's our responsibility to acquire as much knowledge as we can, gain as much financial education as we can, as well as learn from previous generations in order to create the best possible scenario for our kids. And this also includes our children's financial futures. It's important that we prep them in every way possible to succeed in future. Having savings for your children provide them with a safety blanket, as well as set them up to make that transition into adulthood. When you think about the cost of living over the past couple of years, what you need to do is look back over the last 18 years and look at the trajectory. Think of how inflation has impacted us, how financial crises have impacted us, think of all the changes that have impacted us, and how we can now buy less with our money than we could back then. Now use that and to project what the next 18 years will look like. In addition to that, think of purchases they're going to make as they enter adulthood, when they turn 18, or when they become fully fledged adults. There's little things like they're going to want to go to university, you can pay for their tuition fees, you can buy them their first car, they want to buy a house, you can be able to help them with their mortgage deposit, they want to rent, you can help them with a deposit, you can pay their initial rent fees, you can help them pay for their insurance. Having savings set up for your children will really help you and help them to get a head start in life. Because these things generally take years and years to save up for, take ages to save up for. Specifically things like a house deposit or a car, it takes ages to save up for that. Think of how long it's taking people to save up for mortgage deposits right now. It's taking people years, and every time we look at the news and we're talking about housing, it's quite depressing when you think about it at this stage. So think of how you can make your child's life easier in future by setting away some money from now to help them. Quick side note, I know there are people who are watching this who are thinking to themselves, "Oh, I don't want to give my children handouts. I don't want to make life too easy for my children." But I sit on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I believe it's up to me to make sure my daughter has the easiest possible life she can live. It's up to me to ensure that she's equipped with all the right tools to make sure that she lives a wonderful and easy life. I don't believe in bringing children into the world to struggle. Now, I recognize that my daughter's only 4, and as she grows older, my mind might change with regards to that. And as I'm currently sat here, I'm of the mind that I don't want my child to suffer in any capacity. So if it means putting away money from now to make her life easier in the future, I'm going to do that. I don't mind giving my children handouts. I don't mind giving my child a free ball to score the goal at the end. I really don't mind doing that. And if you're again doing that for your child or for your children, I think it's time to take a good long look hard inside at yourself. What are you working hard for, if you're working hard, shall I say? What are you working hard for, if not to make your children's lives easier? Just like my mum before me, she worked hard, she moved to the West, she made sure I was educated to a specific level, she kept pushing me and she didn't let me rest my laurels, and she's come to the point where I am right now. It's up to me to take it to the next level now. It's up to me to provide an even better foundation for my child, to build on what the previous generation have worked on. It's up to me to do that and to provide that pathway to success for my child. In addition to that, having savings for your children is another way for you to teach your child or your children the value of saving money. Just as you're learning, you can pass on what you're learning onto your children from a young age. Next up, we're going to discuss the different types of savings accounts there are for children, or for people in general actually. The first one is a traditional savings account. Now, these ones, I don't actually know if they're still being offered by banks, but traditional savings account is just where you have your book, you go check in, you put in some money, and you earn a nominal interest fee annually. Traditional savings account, you get not something % interest every year, and your money just sat in the bank I guess, accruing that nominal interest. But it's worth noting that if at any point in time the rate of inflation is higher than the rate of interest, you'll be able to buy less with your money. So having money just sat in a traditional savings account, while it's accumulating, it may be worth less in the long run. Next, you have junior ISAs. These are tax-free savings for your children, and what you can do is you can put up to £9,000 annually into an ISA for your child, and it's tax-free and it will earn interest on it, guaranteed interest on it. And there are two main types of junior ISAs. The first one is a cash junior ISA. This is the safer option of the two. It's money sat in the bank, but you're guaranteed a higher interest rate than a traditional savings account, and it's tax-free. It costs £9,000. This one's a lot more secure for your child, and I'll explain why in a minute when I cover the other type of ISA. But it's a lot more secure for your child. However, the only drawback is, like I mentioned previously, if the rate of inflation goes higher than the rate of interest, it'll be worth a lot less. And based on trajectory over the last few months and few years, it's looking like we're heading in that direction. So it's worth us making sure that our money's working, making sure our money's making more money. Which brings me on to the next type of junior ISA, which is a stocks and shares junior ISA. This offers the potential for higher returns, keyword being potential. The reason why I thought I need to highlight that is the fact that although your money can go up, it can also go down. It's down to you as a parent to decide your appetite for risk. And what that means is how much are you willing to lose, or how much are you willing to lose in order to make more money. So when you put money into a stocks and shares ISA, my understanding of it is the bank or whoever you have it open with, they will put that into stocks and shares onto a fund. It's up to you to decide how you want it to be invested. But like I said, these stocks, shares, funds, bonds, they need to grow in value, and with that you will get return, you'll get dividends, which can be reinvested into your child's junior ISA. The next one I'll talk about is the NS&I premium bonds. This was what I actually set up for my daughter when she was first born, and as opposed to getting interest or dividends from your other investments like you would in the other savings accounts I've covered, you are entered into a monthly prize draw where you can win between £25 and £1 million. According to the website, 1 in 3 people are guaranteed to win something every month. I can confirm that since I've opened that account, my daughter's won additional bonds twice. It sounds a bit much. It's been, I believe it was £25 both times, but she's won money back. This was what I actually set up, and the reason why I chose this one was because one, my appetite for risk at that point in time was very, very low. This was when I was still sorting my finances. This is when I was still adjusting to paying for nursery, etc. So funds were tight, and risk wasn't on my mind in that moment. So I set up some premium bonds. I still pay into it, but the plan is to pay into that as well as paying into a junior ISA as well. The next one is children's pensions. Now, this one is barely, if ever, spoken about, but you can actually set up a pension for your child if you wanted to. The reason why it's not really spoken about is because who's really thinking of their child at old age? Who's thinking of their child retiring? I mean, now that I've mentioned it, you may start thinking about that, but generally speaking, people don't really think about retirement for their child, especially not in the UK, where it's just like, you're thinking about your retirement. They want us to retire at 65 or 68, whatever age. Your child retirement is probably not your mind anytime soon, but you can set up a pension for your child if you wanted to, and you can pay into it, I believe it's £2,880 each year tax-free, and the government will top it up with 25%. And with that, the pension gets transferred to your child when they turn 18. The only drawback with this is they are unable to access this money until they turn 55, which is the beginning of the retirement age. Kind of goes without saying, it is a pension after all. But with the government's 25% contribution, you can take up the annual investment to £3,600. And when you work that out over the space of 18 years, you've contributed quite a lot of money towards your child's retirement. Then it's up to them if they want to keep paying into that or if they want to transfer it somewhere else. But you've done your bit in terms of setting your child up for retirement. And the final type of saving you can have for your child is a piggy bank. Now, as we move closer and closer into a cashless world, piggy banks are becoming a forgotten thing. But I think they're actually quite important, because when you have aunties, uncles, family friends or guardians or anyone giving your child money, it encourages them to put away money as opposed to playing money fast. Like, it encourages them to put something aside and teaches them the value of notes and coins. And you know what? It will encourage them to get into a habit of just not spending all their money. But the drawbacks with having a piggy bank is, one, it can get stolen. Obviously, we're hoping here that your home is safe and no one is stealing from your child. Two, as parents, sometimes we may look at a piggy bank as extra cash for us. I encourage you not to do that. And the third one is, with a piggy bank, the money in there isn't really working. It's literally just sat there, accumulating dust. Nothing's happening, and there's no financial education that you can pass on beyond the fact that it's important to save. I know a lot of people think it's educational institution responsibility to teach children about money and taxes, etc. But I'm of the opinion that while they don't currently do that at school, it's down to us as parents to make sure our children are learning these lessons. We can't just expect educational systems to just pick that up because we wanted to. I do hope that at some points they pick up and they do teach children about this stuff in school, because it's so important. But as it currently isn't, it's down to you and I and us as a community to make sure that we're passing on this information to our children. Next up, it's important that we actually talk about how to actually save. What I've realised over the course of my life is saving doesn't come naturally to everyone, and to be quite transparent here, it didn't come naturally to me as well. When it comes to saving, a lot of us have grown up in homes where we're used to every penny getting spent, where I never say every penny getting spent, it's just like we're so used to maxing out our expenses, maxing out, like, if we have the money, we can spend it. And ultimately, I don't believe this is down to anyone's fault. It's just habit and how we've grown up, and we pick up bad habits from our parents, which I've covered in the previous episode. We learn things from our parents, but it's up to us right now to unlearn these things, to unlearn these habits. We don't have to spend money to the final penny. Obviously, it's easy for me to say that depending on your circumstances, and if right now you're looking at people, think to yourself, how can you not save? Just keep in mind that it's not always by choice, sometimes by circumstance as well. Sometimes we haven't got a choice but to spend to the last penny. We don't want to do it, but we kind of have to. So please don't be judgmental on people who may not be saving, on people who spend to the last penny, because it's not in every instance where the person is choosing to spend all their money. Sometimes they just can't avoid it. So if you're trying to save, the first thing I advise you to do is make a note of all your monthly expenses. And this is in order for you to understand exactly where your money is going. Is it going out? Is it going to your general living expenses? Where's your money going? Why is it that you don't have much left after you finish spending? This is what we're trying to tackle in the first instance. Secondly, work out how much you have left once you've taken away all your expenses. This will let you know if you right now you have enough left to save. This will let you know how much you can potentially save. It will let you know your starting point. And when I say a starting point, this is before all the faff, before all the I'm cutting this, I'm cutting that. This is just to give you a general idea of how much you have left after all your expenses have gone out. The next thing to do is to prioritize your expenses. Now, I'm a project manager by day, and when it comes to analyzing stuff, there's a general term that we use as PMs, and that's Moscow analysis. And what that means is we categorize things by whether they're must-haves, should-haves, or nice-to-haves. Must-haves are things that you can't do without, essentially, like you cannot go without it. The should-haves are, you don't necessarily have to have them, but they make a significant impact. The nice-to-haves are the things, the free things, the little like decoration on top, the things that they don't necessarily impact or make a difference to the solution you're building, but it will make the experience better. Now, applying that to savings or applying that to my expenses is just like, what are the things that I can't do without? What are the must-spends? The must-spends are little stuff like rent, transport, utility bills, the basic food shop. When I say basic, I mean the bare minimum, like milk, bread, rice, the staples, essentially. Next up would be the should spends. These are things like gym, broadband, basic TV, streaming sites. These are the should haves. Now, the reason why they're should haves, or the should spends, sorry, they're should spends because they're not part of your basic fundamental needs as a human. These are things that we spend on to generally just make life easier for us. And the final category for me are the nice to spend. These are the things that we don't necessarily have to buy. These are things that we just do it to indulge ourselves, we treat ourselves. And in that category, I'd put stuff like takeaways. You know, when you feel like, oh yeah, I've had a long day, let me treat myself. I don't have to do that. That's just you being nice to yourself, and that's absolutely fine. But just keep in mind, that's a nice to spend. Now that you've categorized all your expenses, the next thing to do is figure out what can you cut out. What can you do without in order for you to save more? What can you do without in order for you to save for your child? Your first step will be to work your way up. So now you've categorized your expenses from the must spend, the should spend, to the nice to spend. If you want to start cutting things out, I will start from bottom, start from a nice to spend. What don't I have to spend on? I don't have to spend on takeaway. I don't have to get dessert. I don't have to do certain things. Then work your way up. Next one is the should spend. That direct debit to the gym that you've been paying for that you've never been to. That mobile phone contract you're paying £70, £80 a month for the latest iPhone or whatever. Left to me, if I know that I'm struggling to save for myself or struggling to save for my child, I'm cutting that. I'm getting a SIM only, yeah, and I'm going to manage. Or you can be like, when this phone contract ends, I'm going to just keep the same phone, get a SIM only, and cut down my phone bill from £70, £80 to £25 a month. And then you may want to look at your must spends. Can I live somewhere smaller? Can I live somewhere cheaper? Now, I'm not encouraging you to make your life uncomfortable. Personally, I am very, very willing to pay for comfort. I love being comfortable and I'm happy to pay for that. Very happy to pay for that. But if you know you're willing to make changes for your life or to make sure that you're saving for yourself, saving for your child, I would have a look at these things. What can I reduce? What costs can I reduce to make sure I have extra bit of money to put aside? Now, once you've identified the changes to your spending that you can make, set that to your child's savings. Now you have extra money. I know it may not seem like much. Like, I'm not one of those people that's going to tell you to cancel your Netflix subscription so you can buy a house. No. I'm not going to tell you to do that at all. I wouldn't do that myself, so I wouldn't tell anyone else to do it. But if I know that I've gone through my spending and there are things that I can cut out in order to make sure that I'm sending money to my child's savings account, I'm going to do that. An extra £20 a month is an extra £240 a year. It may seem little to you now, but over the span of 18 years, it adds up. It becomes a significant amount of money. What I've realised a lot of the time, a lot of people view their children's savings accounts as nice to spend. Consciously or subconsciously, I don't know which one it is, but sometimes they only ever think of saving their child's savings account after they have spent all their money, or it's always an afterthought, and they don't prioritise putting money into their child's savings. I would really, really encourage you to make your child's savings a must spend. Make it as important as spending on your mortgage payments. Make it as important as paying your rent. Make it as important as paying your bills. Paying money to your child's savings, to me, is equally as important as any of these things, because it's an investment into my child's future. I'm of the opinion that my child should have similar savings to mine. I should be able to facilitate both. Now, please, if you aren't able to do this, and if you're not saving to your child's account, please keep in mind, I am not judging you for it, and I don't want you to feel bad when you watch this episode, because everyone's circumstances in life are very, very different. I know people like to say stuff like, we all have the same 24 hours, etc. But we don't. We have 24 hours in a day, literally, but our circumstances are entirely different. So if you're unable to save money to your child's account, or you're unable to save large sums of money to your child's savings account, don't feel bad for it. Don't let anyone make you feel bad for it, because your circumstances are different to theirs. But as we start to wrap up, there are a few things I want to cover which I think are very important. And the first one being that financial education is worth a lot more than people realise. People seem to think it's the educational institution or the government's responsibility to teach their children about financial matters or teach children about money. But for me, currently, the government and schools don't teach children about money. They don't teach them enough, should I say. So it's down to us as parents, as guardians. It's down to us to make sure that we are passing on this information. Anything that we've learned over the years, make sure you pass it to your children, and make sure you actually are learning. Learn from other people, learn from your community, learn from people who are putting out this information. I would actually really encourage you that after you watch this episode, go on, just type into the search bar how to save money, how to invest, how to multiply your income, how to save more. It doesn't matter what it is you want to learn financially, make sure you just look it up, learn whatever less you need to learn, and make sure you pass it on to your children. And let's do some numbers actually. If you start saving £50 a month from when your child was born, for 18 years, that's £600 a year, and across 18 years, that's £10,800. Now, if you bump that up to £100 a month, you would have saved in 18 years £21,600 for your child. This is not money that people have readily accessible. This is not money that people can just pass on to other people. You have intentionally saved this across 18 years, and you have that ready to pass on to your child. Even if currently you can't save more than £5 a month, I know that you, and I trust that you as a parent, you're watching this episode, you're watching this video because you want to be a better parent, you want to be a better person. So even if you can't save that much for your child now, I trust you to make sure that as time goes on, you work your way into a position where you can save more for your child. So start today, build that habit so that when you are earning more, you start saving more by default. Final tip, save before you spend. Try your hardest to save money before you spend. You've worked out your expenses, you've paid your must spends. Now you have however much left, you have your should spends and you have your nice to spend. I would encourage you at that point to put money aside if you can. Obviously, like I keep saying, everyone's circumstances are different, but if you can set aside money before you start spending it, I would encourage you to do that. Don't let saving be an afterthought. Don't let saving for your child be an afterthought. Bump up the priority to a must spend. Make sure you're of the mindset that your child's savings is as important as your mortgage payments. That way you know that each month you have to put money aside for your child. You have to invest in your child's future. And that's all I have for you today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, learned something new, make sure you share it with your friends, share it on social media, and share it with anyone who you feel will benefit from this information. And I'm going to leave how I always leave you, and that's to make your mission today, to make a decision that future you'll be grateful for. Future you'll be grateful for prioritizing your child's savings and setting money aside to invest in their future. So until next time, guys.